Alright, so here we are in our assembly area, and we're going to put the M.A.X installation to effect here in front of everybody. And the first method that we're going to use is the faucet diverter method. Now, when you get this faucet diverter, you'll notice a couple things. Number one, there's a rubber ring on the outside of the handle that will be pre-attached. Number two, there'll be an additional insert in its own baggie. And number three, there'll actually be a ring inserted into the top that can just unscrew very quickly. Inside that ring, you'll see a clear plastic gasket that must be in there, or else you're going to end up with leaks. Now, some of your there's over 100 types of home kitchen faucets. There's no possible way we can put an adapter in here to cover every single one of those faucets. If you find that what we included does not allow you to install to your faucet, give us a call. There is some options. There is some additional fittings that we might be able to send you to get your installation to work. But essentially, every faucet has a tip that screws off. This one is very simple, and you'll see the tip screws right off. Now, if you have an older faucet, I'll give you a little tip on how to get this tip off, because most likely it's corroded on there. It's got some calcium scale that's almost like glue keeping the tip on. The easiest way to remove this tip is to get yourself an adjustable type pliers and a washcloth or a rag, and wrap the rag around the tip, and then lightly, and I say lightly, clamp your pliers on the tip and turn it counterclockwise. You only need to turn it once to break the threads so you can get it off by hand. You don't want to squeeze real hard with your wrench, and you don't want to do it without the rag, because what you'll do is you'll cut into the chrome finish on your faucet. Once you remove the tip of the faucet, keep it somewhere, because if you ever move or sell the place, you're going to need to reinstall this. So don't lose this. I always recommend that all spare parts for the ionizer, for your faucet, for whatever, any spare plumbing parts as part of this install, keep it inside the accessory box. That way you'll only have one place to look for any parts that are missing for this install. So now all we have to do, now you'll notice when I took my cap off, I'm left with male threads. Some of you will be left with female threads. If you have female threads, you're going to want to leave this ring in place, and you're going to want to take this black rubber gasket off and insert it in the recess right on top here, and then you'll insert it up inside the faucet and screw it in. This one has male threads, so we're going to actually remove this inner piece, and again, where will we put our spare parts? We'll put them inside our accessory box. And we can simply screw on the faucet diverter to our faucet tip. Believe it or not, it's that simple. So now when you turn your water on, if the lever is facing down, the water will come out of your faucet as normal. If you flip this black lever up, it will divert the water from coming down and send it over to the ionizer. So this is called the faucet diverter. Going from here, the install is very fast. You're going to locate your roll of 1/4-inch tubing. Really, the only two tools you should need for this install is a pliers. It doesn't have to look like this, but any type of pliers, and a good sharp scissor. If you don't have a good sharp scissor, you can have a razor blade or a box cutter razor knife. Whatever it is, it needs to be sharp. You go ahead and cut off these cables that are holding the tubing together. And what I like to do is just find the halfway point of the tubing and cut the tubing in half. Now here's a trick about this tubing. When you're cutting the tubing with the scissors, it tends to flatten out at the tip, so it's not a circle anymore. It has to be a circle to work with the quick connect fittings. So the easiest way to bring it back to being a circle is just lightly stick the tip of the scissors in there and twist it around a little bit and bring it back to a circle. If you see any jagged edges or burrs, go ahead and snip them off with the scissor. The only time a quick connect fitting will ever leak is if this tubing is not cut properly. So for an example, if you install the piece and now you turn the water on and it's dripping from this joint, remove the piece, recut the edge, make sure it's cut square and not on an angle. It's cut square and there's no burrs and the inside has been rounded again. If you've done that, the chances of this joint leaking are almost zero. So we'll take our first section that we cut, and I'll turn the diverter sideways so you can see exactly what we're doing. We have a barbed end here, and we're going to take this hose and we're going to force it over that barbed end. It does take a little bit of pressure on your point. You want to hold the tubing as close to the barb as possible so you don't end up breaking or bending the tubing. Once the tubing is pushed all the way onto the barb, that's it. There's nothing else for you to do. I would twist this so the tubing is facing straight back and parallel with the faucet, and this is now your supply line. Now, I am noticing that this edge is not cut square. I don't know if you could see that on the video, but before I try to install this to the ionizer, I'm actually going to cut this again, clean out the tip, and cut the little burr that I ended up with. And now it's more cut square and ready to install to the ionizer. Now, you'll notice that there's two additional pieces that came in your accessories. One is this barrel fitting, and two is this pressure reducer. This one is a sediment screen. It's actually designed to prevent sediment from getting into the ionizer. So we're going to want to put this on first. This is a pressure reducer. This is for homes that have in excess of 80 pounds per square inch of pressure in the house. I would not pre-install this unless you discover that you need it. One telltale sign showing that you do need this is if the install is all complete and you're hitting the power button but no water will turn on. If you're hitting the power button and the water will not turn on, that's generally because the pressure is much too high. If that's the case, you'll install this and you'll see it has an arrow showing the flow direction. So the flow direction from in to out is going this way. And all we would do is install this piece right before the pressure reducer. So we've got this piece here, the pressure reducer. Cut another little small section of tubing. And now we can hook up our screen with our pressure reducer. And we'll need another small section of tubing to go from here to connect into the back of the ionizer. For our install today, I'm going to go ahead and pull this pressure reducer out. And I'm going to put the screen in. Because remember, the screen is always going to be on this install, no matter what your method is. And then we'll put this piece to go directly into the ionizer. I'll take my pressure reducer and I'll store it in my accessory box. All right, believe it or not, our install is almost done. The only other thing we'll need to do is take the other end of our hose. We're going to flip our machine over to the side, and I highly recommend every time you have the machine over on its side, put some towel or something down on the countertop to avoid any scratches. All right, so again, like we said earlier, you'll see that there's only 2 installation points underneath for the tubing. I'll just go ahead and remove the plastic plug cover. And I'll take one end of this tube and I'll put it on our acidic drain. Again, pushing the tubing in as far as it will go. And the second end of the tubing will go into our inlet for our alkaline feed. Now before I set this back upright, I want you to notice there's a black cap here and it has a flat recess in it. This black cap is for the fuse. So if your ionizer ever stops working or the lights on the front panel go off, you'll need to take a penny, a dime, or your fingernail or a flat tip screwdriver and take this cover off and pull the fuse out. You'll look at the fuse, you'll see it has a burn mark on the glass. That just means you need a new fuse. We do include a new fuse inside the ionizer accessory kit. Even though I didn't show one today, there should be one inside your kit. If you don't have one in your kit, you can take this fuse into your local automotive parts store, and it is a standard fuse that they should have a replacement for that fuse there. Or of course you can call us and we'll be happy to send you one out. You'll also notice that there is an adjustment here on the acid drain. If you ever need to adjust this acid drain, and this is the flow control, so this adjusts the speed of how fast the acid water is coming out of the machine. We never ever want you to take a wrench like this and clamp the outside of this adjuster and try to turn it. This is designed for a hex head wrench or an Allen wrench. I'm sorry, as we're filming, I don't know the exact size Allen wrench that's needed off the top of my head. But this is a standard hex head adapter, and it goes right inside this piece, and it allows you to turn the acid flow valve. Unless you're instructed by us, please never turn the acid flow valve. There's no reason to adjust it unless you're instructed by us or it's part of a particular install instruction that you're working on. Unless you're instructed to, never turn this dial. There's no need. All right, so now we have our water supply connected to the ionizer, and we have our drain supply. So we'll go ahead and set it back upright. Of course, we'll find a GFI outlet. All kitchens should be supplied with a GFI surge protected outlet to plug this into. We will take our suction cup and remove the short tubing at the end of it. Insert this into our acid water drain line and just adhere it to the inside of the sink. Some people put it on the very top of the sink like this, so it's shooting into the sink. and then some people put it on the very side of the sink. That's totally up to you what method you'll use to install that. You can also take a tie and tie these hoses together, but essentially now you have a working machine. That's it for the install, believe it or not. And if you are using the ionizer without any pre-filter and it's just connected to your faucet adapter, then turning the ionizer on is this simple. You open the cold water, make sure it is on the cold, turn the diverter up sideways. You'll know it's in the right direction because no water will be coming down. It will be going over to the ionizer. You'll hit the power button once to wake the machine up, and we're going to go through this in detail later in our adjustment segment. And you'll hit the power button a second time and the machine will say turn on, and the water will start to flow both out of the alkaline spout and the acid drain tube. You do want to make sure that the water flow control valve on the side of the unit is opened up to where it says maximum or turned all the way to the right. I want you to also notice on the ionizer that the front panel has two separate plastic covers. I'm not going to peel them off of this one, but you'll see that there's these bubbled, the plastic is bubbled up, so it's very obvious the plastic cover is on this unit. Some of your units, you won't see any bubbles and you won't know that there's a plastic cover. There's two separate strips. There's one for the control strip over here, and there's a big plastic strip over the main panel. You can leave those on if you want, but it is a waterproof plastic panel, so there's really no reason to leave them on, and it looks a lot more beautiful and a lot more shiny when you've pulled off these plastic covers. Essentially, this is it. Now, if you're using the ionizer with a pre-filter, which I hope most of you are, if not all of you, then the pre-filter will simply install, and we're talking about a Chanson C3 pre-filter. It will install directly to your cold line under the sink. And we'll go over the install of the C3 pre-filter in a separate segment. But basically the C3 will be connected directly to your cold line, so when you turn on your cold water above the sink, all that cold water is pre-filtered water. If you're using the Ionizer Armor, which is also a product we highly, highly recommend, this product will perfect the water, it will microcluster it better than the ionizer does, and it will prevent scale and mineral deposits. Well, let me back up. It won't prevent them, but it will reduce the speed at which they build up by at least 60 to 70%. It's a phenomenal product. We've developed this over 5 years ago. We've got thousands of them in use, and they really do work. If you don't have this, it's something that you should consider upgrading to at some point. You don't need this for your ionizer to work and perform properly. This is an accessory product. It will perfect the ionizer. If you're installing this, you simply snap it apart from the back plate, locate your feed line, which is the water going into the ionizer, and just snap it. You'll see that there's an actual recess right here that holds that tubing. So you'll just snap this over the tubing and it is permanently installed, and you can slide it behind the ionizer so it's not visible. That armor can also be installed under the sink along with the pre-filter, and we'll go over that during the pre-filter installation instructions.